Hey guys, this is Joe. I actually just wanted to come on before the video starts. The video you're about to watch we filmed a little bit late at night, or later at night than we usually do. You'll see Amy yawn a couple of times during the video, and I actually misspoke a few times in the video, so I wanted to preempt this by quickly apologizing for that and letting you guys know. I mentioned that the new set that we're going to be going into following Eldritch Moon is called Regatha. That was incorrect. I said that was Chandra's home plane. That's actually the plane that she first planeswalks to. We learned that in Magic Origins. We're actually going to Kaladesh. So apologies for that. I also mentioned Kahili Rai is the name of the new planeswalker. It's actually Sahili Rai. That pronunciation could be wrong, but I believe it is correct. But yeah, so I mixed up those two letters there. So apologies for that in advance. If I misspoke further, please let me know in the comments down below, but otherwise, enjoy the video. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you who may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review. And so we're here this week for the second time, and the last time, at least for now, to... it's a transition week in between Shadows Over Innistrad and Eldritch Moon / cleanup of Shadows Over Innistrad leading into Eldritch Moon. So there's another Eternal Masters themed story this week, and we're going to talk about some other stuff as well, different from our topic from last week. So if you watched our video last time, it is, like I said, it's going to be a different secondary topic this time. But first, we did read the story of those that came before, or the things that came before. Basically, it was the story of the card Ancestral Mask. I talked about some other cards like Horn Troll and things like that, which, as far as I know, Horn Troll isn't being reprinted in Eternal Masters. I think it was just a convenient random enemy for them to put in, as a conflict of some kind. This was a story about the Cho-Aram people, and it was a story about them fighting the Mercadians, or at least their conflict with the Mercadians, because the fight actually technically happens right after the story ends. But it was the Cho-Aram people who were, this is all older stuff, obviously, since Eternal Masters is Eternal formats, stuff that's being reprinted. So, interesting story. I mean, kind of the same thing that I mentioned last week. I don't know that there was anyone out there who was like, I really want to know what the story is behind that Ancestral Mask card.
It's a pretty cool looking card.
Correct. You mean the new art.
Yeah.
The old art was a little weird, and the new art is really cool, and the new art does show it very much in the way that it was described in the story of, like pieces of ceramic or almost mosaic kind of collecting together to create a mask. The mask had like a green tinge to it, like the coloration of it. It was glowing a little bit.
It was definitely like magical looking.
Oh yeah, so that was really cool. So I'll agree with that. Again, the card looks cool. I just don't think it needed a story. Like, they have one, and it worked well. My personal opinion, the story started really slow. I feel like if I was just reading this story, not for JaAR, not with Amy, I probably would have given up.
Okay.
As soon as we got to like the part with the troll, they were like, oh, because the other thing was, I found it a little confusing the way that they named characters, because every character was Cho something. Cho a gate. Cho...
I just kept thinking Cho Chang.
Yes, from Harry Potter. So, we actually have some Harry Potter books in the background here. But yeah, like, that's what Amy thought of, and not that I didn't think of it, but it was I was trying to keep track of all of the characters, and they kept mentioning all these characters, and all of them...
Yeah, I'll definitely agree that the names were kind of confusing.
Yeah, and especially in the beginning, I was like, there's so many characters, and it's one story. So I was having trouble, like forcing myself to try to remember all these people, because it was like, in 5 minutes, I'm going to be done reading this story, and I'm not going to care anymore what their names are. But right now, I'm being, like, inundated with all these names, and they all start with Cho, and, like, everyone's...
If I don't understand who's who, it's going to be so confusing.
And again, if you guys have never watched a show before, I read the story out loud. Amy is there with me, so Amy didn't see this, but in the story, anytime they referred to someone Cho whatever, if they referred to them later on, there would be times where they would omit the Cho and they would just refer to them as their secondary name. And in doing that in the story, there was a little apostrophe and then their name, just to show that they were eliminating the Cho portion of it. Whatever.
I did notice that as you were reading it, but obviously
Right.
I wasn't seeing it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just a storytelling thing that they did,
Yeah,
you know.
so it's not too repetitive, I guess, but...
It's fine. It was, again, that's kind of why I was so bored in the beginning, because it was like, you know, name after name after name, and then they mentioned the brother.
They were all pretty much the same.
Yeah,
name.
well, and they mentioned the brother Cho Ran, who they mentioned, like, wasn't around. So I was like, okay, so do I not care about the brother? Like, was that like a throwaway statement of like, oh, Cho Ran, but, you know, he's not here, he's off traveling with the scouts. So I was like, okay, cool, so he's not here, so I don't have to care, right? Like, it doesn't matter. And then sure enough, he mattered because he came up later, and then he died.
Because he wouldn't be in the story if he didn't matter.
Well, I didn't necessarily know that. Like, because it could have just been like, oh, and they were talking a lot about gardening in the beginning, which I kind of tuned out because I'm not a big gardening fan. And I get that, like, the story wouldn't... I knew, I guess, that the story would not be all about gardening, but I guess to go through all of the, like,
It's not at all about gardening.
In the beginning, it was like, oh, we got to go get these herbs. So that's kind of the setup to the story of, you know, we're traveling to get these herbs.
The point was to show that the mom was cool.
One of the mothers was cool. Yes, and they showed... And they were getting the herbs to put in the bodies to replace the organs before they burned them and cremated them and then scattered their ashes in the water.
Well, to make the body smell better.
Right. Right, because the organs were, like, dying and stuff. So, yeah. I mean, again, my opinion, in the beginning, very slow. I probably would not have gotten to the end if I just happened upon the story and was reading it. It was hard to get into. Okay.
I thought that part was super cool. I really liked the mom after that. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, can the story be more about her? And it unfortunately was not.
Very much not. It was really about the girl.
Yeah.
It was really.
But it was about the girl
daughter.
learning that, you know, her opinions that her mother was wrong, or, you know, maybe a little too old world, and, you know, you learn that she learns that, you know, she was kind of wrong.
Right. Well, and that's important because this is a story about the importance of ancestors, because it's the ancestral mask, and later on the girl kind of absorbs all of her ancestry and becomes the embodiment of the Cho-Aram people and the people that led to the Cho-Aram people. So
it's supposed to be kind of ironic, I guess, because she's basically in the beginning the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And sort of the last person you would think to ultimately become that.
But you get to learn from your ancestors, and she kind of agrees to make the sacrifice, to sacrifice her own life to wear this ancestral mask and give of herself to her people, because her people were dying of plague or sickness or whatever the specific aspect of it was. And so she gave of herself and wore the mask. I thought that it was a little brutal the way that the mask was described, especially because I own a bunch of the old ancestral mask. Again, kind of a throwaway card, at least in the past. The art was weird. It was like some person like leaning sideways with this glowing mask on.
It was like a witch doctor.
Right, but it was not, or a shaman, which is what they were talking about in the story, but it was not what it was described as in this story by any means. I mean, it was a fully fleshed out mask. In the old art, it was glowing. I think
it was like an actual mask.
Right.
Right,
in the old art, yeah, as opposed to in this one,
your face have a mask.
Yeah, with ceramic pieces that have to like stab into your flesh,
themselves.
Which was pretty gruesome. I mean, they did a good job of describing it, and you really got a good image of it.
Really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. But it seemed unnatural to me because I knew the old card first, and that's not what the old card was, and I'm sure that's not what it was meant to be either. So yeah, that was the story. I think overall, once I got into it, I enjoyed it. I think by the end of it, I don't necessarily feel fulfilled, just because like it was cool, but I didn't necessarily like with the Shadows Over Innistrad story and the Oath of the Gatewatch stories, etc. Like that's a story that I wanted to be told, and it led into the next one, and
Right.
it pertained to whatever was coming after. This one, and similarly to the Prodigal Sorcerer story from last week, it didn't do anything because when it was done, it was just done. So
I think if this story had a few installments,
okay.
you know, you could get more invested in the characters and actually care what happens to them.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, at this point, especially because I know that there aren't other installments, I don't want it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But I could say, and this is me in terms of I enjoy this type of storytelling, if there were connections to other cards from Eternal Masters, I probably would have appreciated it more.
Yeah.
To be like, oh, that's cool how they connected it. And they showed like the Golden Glow moth. You know, they showed that image, and the moth imagery was all
beautiful.
over. Yes, it's a beautiful card. I've always loved that art. That card may be being reprinted in Eternal Masters. I don't remember offhand. But if it is, then that's cool. But that was only one connection. I think it would have been nicer if there were more. A lot of the other art that was shown, I mentioned the Horned Troll, the Golden Glow Moth, and the Ancestral Mask were three of the pieces of art that were shown within the story as you were scrolling down. All of the others, and no complaints whatsoever, but all of the others were kind of almost set pieces. You know, it was like land imagery or the Mercadia town or whatever, which was beautiful, don't get me wrong.
Beautiful landscape pictures.
Yes, very, very nice. It doesn't tie into the game as much because, like, one of the pictures was literally just a random island art that they showed us. So it was beautiful, and it was very nice to look at. But it didn't do what then I'm mentioning that I think would have been a little bit nicer, which is tying it into more of the cards in the story. Because maybe that's because I'm so used to it with Shadows Over Innistrad or, you know, the regular storyline stuff where it's like one after the other, showing you all of these different cards. Now, overall, though, I think the story was nice. If you have some time, read it. I would not go out of your way, in my personal opinion, to you know, it's not like you must read this story, it's so good. If you haven't yet, your time would probably be better spent reading I Am Avacyn. Maybe even reading it again. I just, that story was so good. This one was in my opinion.
Yeah. Like I said, this one I think had its moments. I think there were a few great lines in this story.
Fair enough.
That's about it.
Yeah.
So, if you want to spend that much time getting the few good lines out, be my guest.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not a terrible story, by any means.
And it was not terribly long necessarily.
No.
I mean, you'll find out in a minute we did other things to get ready for this episode, so it feels like it took a long time, but that's because we read 2 other articles in preparation for this video, so at that point it felt long, but I think that story alone, or that article alone, was not by any means long.
Right.
So, speaking of which, though, in an effort to transition away from that story and move on to the next thing, there were other articles that were written this week that I kind of earmarked and wanted Amy and I to look at. We were speaking of, you know, a story that properly connected a lot of different cards. And so I want to move on to an article that was printed this week called The Hanweir Chronicle Recap. And I have some critiques on it, but I also think that it was cool. Like, the concept of it was really cool. Because what the Hanweir Chronicle was, for those of you that may not know, there was literally a website. If you Google it or Bing it or whatever your preferred search engine is, if you search for it online, you'll be able to find the Hanweir Chronicle. And it's a list of information, it's a list of fake newspaper articles, kind of brought together. This article brought them all together. And it showed fake newspaper articles written by Oliver something or other. I'm not going to remember his last name now, but fake named person from Hanweir. It was a group of people who seceded and kind of formed their own town. That town was walled off, and those people lived within that town, and these newspaper articles were newspaper articles released within Hanweir talking about how the general population of Innistrad was handling the madness of Shadows Over Innistrad. Interesting, because, you know, now all these people have been abandoned by Avacyn and are living on their own, and how do they handle that? Do they go crazy too? Are they still fighting off werewolves and vampires and zombies and spirits and stuff? One thing that I liked, and I don't know if you picked up on this as much because we didn't really talk about it as we were reading it, but the Hanweir Chronicle, very sneakily just shoved in names of cards. Uninvited Geist, Unimpeded Trespasser, Bygone Bishop, Bearer of Overwhelming Truths. There were, and that's to name a few. There were a lot just thrown in there, and they weren't accompanied by, you know, you couldn't like mouse over it and the card would pop up. It was just there where if you know the cards in the set, you'll see it. You'll see it, and it's like I said, it's a nice little Easter egg almost in reading the Hanweir Chronicle stories. But the stories were actually kind of cool too. Yeah. Just talking about the council, and that the council decided to secede. It was like a 5-4 vote, so like they just made it. One of the council women went crazy, and there was like a fist fight at one point, and she went over the wall and said, like, left a note on her house saying that she was going to go serve the queen, which presumably was Avacyn. At least that's what we got from it, that she was going to serve Avacyn, which meant that she was the one going crazy, even though it seemed all of them were going crazy, just in different ways. The other thing that I thought was interesting was they talked about the walls, and they talked about like building up the walls, and that nobody could get in, nobody was allowed to go out, but that if people were going against the council's wishes, that they would be kind of banished outside of the walls. But I thought it was interesting because part of the thing that they were trying to save themselves from was Avacyn and the angels. Well, a wall doesn't stop something that can fly, so I don't fully get that point. I mean, I guess it protects them from werewolves, and we know it protects them from vampires, because at one point, one of the articles was written by this Oliver guy who was a reporter for the Chronicle, and talked about how he tried to interview one of the vampires who had come up to the wall and was super hungry and begging to be let in, and he was trying to interview her, and he's asking her all these questions, and she's like, none of that matters, I'm just really thirsty, please let me in. And he gives her a rat, and she says that she can't eat the rat, so, like, you know, and what's wrong with you? And so he, like, cuts himself on his finger and, like, drips the blood over. And so she drinks the blood a little bit, and then is, like, ravenous now and trying to get over it, and so she's killed. She gets shot with an arrow, and so, very, very weird.
Stupid.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But what I think about all of this, one of the cool things that they did, and Amy, we can talk about this in a second, but one of the cool things that they did was, seemingly, Wizards of the Coast / Hasbro sent packages to people. They don't explain it necessarily, but packages were sent to people. And those packages contained, well, first of all, they showed, there were, I think, 2 videos of people opening packages. One was either in a German language or a Dutch language. We are ignorant Americans.
Russian.
I speak like a language and a half, being English and like half Spanish, but it was a language that I'm not aware of. And then there was another video of someone speaking in Portuguese. It was from Brazil. And so another package being opened there. There was another one that was either in Chinese or Japanese, that, you know, with kanji, that was just a picture. And then there was a picture as well in the English language. And these people receive these packages, they open up the packages, and within it, within the package, at least the one I'm going to work off of is the first one, which was the German or Dutch or Russian language. The package, they opened it up, and inside the package was bubble wrap. Under the bubble wrap was another box. So they take the box out, and they cut the tape off, and inside that box is paper. And they take the paper out, and inside of there is a wooden box. And on that wooden box, it was made to look old. It was made to look like the symbol of Shadows Over Innistrad was burned into that wood. Whether it actually was or wasn't, I can't tell, but it looked fake. Like, it didn't look like it was actually branded on there, but it may have been. On the back of the box, it showed the company that made it. You know, it said like Marek made or something like that. It had Magic the Gathering on there. And it was wrapped in old-timey twine. And so when you cut the twine and you open the box, inside of the box was paper. And it was paper that was made to look old. It looked like it was, you know, kind of dirty at the edges and kind of crinkled and worn.
No, it was just like that.
And then
They were like, ooh, this paper looks gross.
let's use it for this
Oh,
thing.
well.
There was a wax seal on one of them, which was a nice touch. I thought that was really cool. Also, the
It was on
paper.
all of them, no?
Not on all. Well, like, because
At least two of them.
the package that I'm talking about had two pieces of paper wrapped up. And both were wrapped in twine as well. But one was wrapped in twine with a wax seal. The other just wrapped in twine. And because the picture that was in there was just wrapped in twine, the letter actually had the seal on it. And again, as I said, there was a picture, and then there was a letter. And the letter was written in the language that the person was speaking in the video, and so it was translated underneath in this article. So it may have even been one of the stories that we already mentioned. I don't exactly remember. But yes, I believe it was the vampire story, actually. So there you go. That was sent to a person. Now, the thing that I was frustrated by, that I wanted to bring up was, and look, again, ignorant American speaking here. So I don't speak the languages that were spoken by the people who actually made videos of themselves opening these packages. So I don't know. Amy asked the question, and I don't know offhand, but Amy said, well, did they just randomly get sent these packages? Did they order these? Were they like part of a
was
list?
This a purchase, or was this like a thing that they won?
Right. Well, that's what, yeah,
Was it
that's
like
what I was
a
going to say. Like,
sweepstakes?
yeah, and like
who knows?
someone will be sent something cool. Who knows? Because again, the one that was in English, which would be the one that I would be able to understand, was just a picture. Just a picture was taken and posted, and it had like a jar with like red liquid in it, which looked like blood, but there was no explanation of it, so I don't understand. So if you guys know, let us know in the comments down below, please, because I'm really genuinely curious, because it seemed really cool, but there wasn't enough information.
When you read off what the concept of it was, I said, wow, that's really cool.
And
I
it
love
seemed
that.
it, yeah.
And then when we got to the article, it was like, okay, this is just confusing.
Yeah. And Wizards of the Coast, we've always said, if you're watching this, I would be more than happy to get a package from you in English, open it up, and put it right here on this channel for everybody to see. So
I'll take a package in any language, really. I'm okay with that. You know?
it would be difficult for us to translate it, but I guess
don't care.
I'll just take it in English. You can send it to Amy in all the different languages, but
That'd be cool.
regardless, I'd be more than happy to open something online, on video and open it for Eldritch Moon, for any other set after the fact. But regardless, I also agree that it was a really cool concept. I wish I had more information, and I wish that the lead up to the recap specified that a little bit. I think the recap article was just so into the fact that this really happened. Like this was really the story of it. So they didn't talk about the real world aspect of it, of like, oh, this is how these people got these packages, or did they actually receive them on the dates that were specified, like March whatever and Feb, because it was spaced out that way of like, well, February this happened, and is that when it was released on the Hammer Chronicle website, or is that like when it was supposed to be happening on Innistrad? I assume that it was when it was released, but Did the video get released that day? Was that like part of what they had to do, you know, in receiving the package? I have a lot of questions. So, again, if you guys know, let us know in the comments below. If you're Wizards of the Coast, send us these packages. We're more than happy to open them for you. But also, just in general, like, you know, I'm just curious. And if there was a place that I could look to find out this information, you know, link it to us or something. But regardless, that was my critique of the Handwear Chronicle recap. I think it was cool. Again, this time I won't say that I don't think it was something that was needed, because technically it wasn't. It wasn't a question where people were like, oh, I wonder what the average citizen is doing. But as soon as they mentioned it, I was like, you know what, I am curious. You know, I want to see that now. And so now that I have seen it, I feel happy. Like, I like the fact that that information was given and we know it now. And I want to know now information outside of the story and outside of the world of Innistrad. I want to know here on Earth, how did this happen? How did this come about? And again, if I spoke the languages or understood the languages of the people who made the videos of the openings, it probably tells me that in the videos. It's just that the people, the English-speaking person who got the package just took a picture and didn't make a video of it, which is fine. Whoever it was, congratulations, I guess, if it was a sweepstakes or something on getting that. But yeah, I'm just a curious person and want to know how that happened.
Maybe it's just like a loot crate style thing that, you know.
Yeah, that you may have gotten, I don't know.
You know, they pay a prescription every, a subscription every month or whatever it is, and
I forgot to
what they got for this.
I forgot to mention, inside of the wooden box, it said #Handwear Chronicle, so it didn't even like, seemingly at least, and I may have missed it, but it didn't like say handwearchronicle.com. But I figure like if you looked up Handwear Chronicle, you know, if you like got this in the mail and you had no idea what it was, and you just, you know, looked up Handwear Chronicle, you probably would have been able to find it. So who knows? But that was that. That was the second article that we read. And the last article that we read was called Something Twisted This Way Comes. And I think it's a very appropriate way to end this video because we are going next week into the transition towards Eldritch Moon, you know, end of Shadows Over Innistrad into Eldritch Moon. We have not had any spoilers yet for Eldritch Moon, none whatsoever, because we've been in Eternal Masters spoiler territory. This video started as Eternal Masters, and I will say, I did pre-order a box. I promised, Amy promised, I said we would try a couple weeks ago, or last week, to get a box.
I would have helped you pay for it if you needed me to.
Well, I don't even think that was it. I didn't know if where we were going was able to have enough boxes, you know, whether we had enough money or not.
Else,
right. So we found it. We have one. We will be picking it up on release day. I can't promise the video will be out release day. It might be out Saturday, the day after, but subscribe, as we always tell you, subscribe for all of our stuff. But if you're interested in seeing us open Eternal Masters, I've heard a lot of people, as I said last week, keeping the box sealed. I will not be doing that. I will be opening it. I'm not super confident on the fact that I'll be able to recoup my value, but I'm more than happy to open something insane. So stay tuned. I will go, you know, I'll go nuts. We have plans for how we're going to open it up, but you guys will see, like I said, either Friday or Saturday. We will have it out over the course of that weekend. So subscribe and stay tuned. But regardless, Something Twisted This Way Comes is our way to get back into the Shadows story. It was a compilation of looking at the different art from Shadows Over Innistrad and the different visual cues that they gave us within the art of the cards to talk about the mystery.
Yeah.
And the way that the mystery was presented...
They gave us clues.
Right. Nicely done. With the way that the article was presented, it said, you know, we're not going to tell you what it is, but they kind of did.
Yeah.
Just because if you're able to put two and two together, and they talked about, you know, there are interesting fan theories out there. If you've watched this series from the beginning, if you went back and watched this series from the beginning, you know that I'm aware, or we are aware, of the fan theory that the madness is being caused by Emrakul. We had gotten to a point in the story where it really looked like the cryptoliths were channeling energy to the Drownyard Temple to make the Eldritch Moon, or whatever you want to call it, and that it was all being done by Nahiri as a way to get back at Sorin. And so I was genuinely hoping that the Eldritch Moon was just that, an Eldritch Moon, and that it was going to be messing with creatures of pure mana that are the angels, and that was all it would be. But that doesn't look to be the case. And people have been talking about it in their theories. I think I just didn't want it to be the case. I'm not going to go into in this video what I think or why, only because it has not been definitively said that that is what it is. It's pretty likely, but there's still that slight possibility that it's not. And so I'm not going to go on a rant unnecessarily.
Thank God.
You'll get it eventually. If it truly is what we think it is, you'll get it eventually. Look at how happy she is. But regardless, the fan theory, the likely thing now looking at the art and reading that article, is that it is very likely Emrakul that is causing this. Now, this is not a revelation. This has been talked about since the set first came out. People were looking at Thraben Inspector, people were looking at Warped Landscape, and looking at the pictures and seeing the tentacles, and everybody was like, hey, tentacles, Emrakul. And I was like, look, tentacles doesn't just mean Emrakul, but if you look at not only tentacles, but they talked about the lattice work, they talked about the coloration of the tentacles, the coloration of the madness in general.
Yeah.
Things are changing, and they are changing to look a lot like Emrakul. I will be upset if that is what it is. You will hear me talk about it if you subscribe and stay tuned for when More-JaAR comes out, because it will be coming out. I don't want it to be the case. If it is, I'll explain why. If it's not, I'll be happy about it. But that does seem to be the stepping stones that they're using to get us there. We'll see. I think I don't know that I've heard a lot of people being upset over the fact that they think it's Emrakul. I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's going to be Emrakul, this is so sweet.
I think they just like Emrakul. They don't necessarily think about what the story will be if it's that. As
a Vorthos player, we can talk about it. I'll show off my hashtag Vorthos Pride in talking about the story and why I think it would be unnecessary for it to be Emrakul. But
probably shouldn't show it off. We're on camera.
Wow. All the time that we've talked about Vorthos Pride, that's the first time you've made that joke. I love it. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see if it is Emrakul. It seems to be Emrakul. That's just, if I was a betting man, I'd put the money on Emrakul. The article talked about that. The art is leading us there. That's what it looks like. I don't want it to be the case, but it's not about what I want. So, because to be honest, I just want a good set of Magic cards. I want good value. I want good fun. I want to be able to open the product and get it out there for all of you guys to see. I want to have a good story. If it is Emrakul, if the story is good, I'm fine with it. So, let us have a good story. If it's Emrakul, let it be interesting. Let it be Nahiri getting back at Sorin for leaving her, for leaving Innistrad, or for leaving Zendikar, to come back to Innistrad and leaving it all alone, and for convincing her to keep the Eldrazi on her plane. And so now she's like, fine, you want me to keep those Eldrazi on my plane? Great. Guess what? I'm bringing one to yours. With the cryptoliths. And that is really what it seems to be. It's, tit for tat, fine. I'll bring the biggest and scariest one over here. And Jace is already there, Liliana's already there. Does he bring in the rest of the Gatewatch to take care of another Eldrazi Titan? We'll see. It remains to be seen, because to be fair, I don't know that he needs the Gatewatch, because he's got himself, Liliana, Tamio, Sorin, and technically Nahiri, there are already 5 planeswalkers on the plane. I'm sorry, 6 if you count Arlencord, but there are 6 different planeswalkers on the plane of Innistrad, besides Olivia and all of these other like big time people who can help them.
So Innistrad is the place to go if you're a planeswalker.
I'm not so sure about that. Not if Emrakul's going to be there. It's a bad idea.
Because half of the planeswalkers are on that one plane.
There's a lot of planeswalkers. There's a lot of them. Regardless, we will see where it's going. After Eldritch Moon, we have been shown that we will be going to Regatha, which is Chandra's home plane. It's a place that we've technically never been before. We've seen cards from there just because of Magic Origins, so it's like some of the architecture we're familiar with, but we have a new planeswalker in Keely Rai, I believe her name is, which we will see as the story gets to that point. That's way in the future. We're still coming to Eldritch Moon, and I'm super excited about that, so stay tuned to our channel for that. Any thoughts on these last two articles? I know we kind of talked about it already, but
I don't know.
It's been a kind of a long video, guys. So we're gonna let you guys go. We're gonna go. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been our second of our transitional JaAR episodes of us talking about some things slightly outside of the story. We delved a little bit more into real world stuff last time, and this time we delved more into some articles and stuff like that. So let us know what you think. Let us know what you thought of it. Obviously, next week we're going back into the regular stories, but we always welcome feedback in the comment section of this video. You can check out our Facebook and Twitter. Those links are in the description. Let us know what you thought. Share this video with your friends. Share our information with your friends. This is the new Geek for All YouTube channel, so it is for all. If people are interested in those kinds of things, please let them know. If you want to share your hashtag Vorthos Pride with your friends, that's a great way to do that. So, and thank you in advance for any comments, for any sharing that you do, for any support that you give. We really appreciate it. Yes. If you do none of those things, thank you for watching nonetheless. If you've gotten this far, you're pretty devoted, because this, again, has been kind of a long video. So, thank you guys so much. Or
you just enjoy watching people make fools of themselves.
Fair.
One or the other.
Fair. So, from Geek for All, I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.